Welcome to Torah Smash, the podcast for nerdy Jews, where our lives of Jewish learning collide with our love of nerd culture. In each episode, we discuss what we lovingly call a Torah Smash, which we have defined as a beautiful collision of one thing from the world of Judaism with another from nerd culture. I'm Ethan Lane Miller, and joining me today are
Barack Malkin.
RDY.
Oh boy, y'all, I am so excited for today's episode. I don't even know
Of course you are.
where to begin.
I did my homework. I did it.
I did too.
You. Oh, good. So
yeah, I watched it.
I've had the general idea for this episode in my head for years now. And by years, I mean the idea that I want to talk about has been floating around in my noggin since before Torah Smash was even an idea in Barack's head. So I'm so excited to have this conversation with you. This episode is slated to release the week before First Contact Day, and I saw it coming up in the calendar, and I knew it's time.
Which is April 5th?
April 5th, 2063. So we've got a few years to go before we get there.
For our listeners listening in 2063, hi.
Yeah.
Hi.
I hope World War III wasn't as terrible as it was portrayed to be.
April 5th, 2063 is the day before my daughter's 53rd birthday.
Oh, happy birthday.
You know, I told my dad we were doing this because I grew up in a Trekkie household and my dad's a huge Trekkie fan. In fact, by the time this episode comes out, he would have booked his ticket for next year's Star Trek anniversary cruise.
Oh,
and
wow.
I told him that, and he never realized that he got married the day before First Contact Day. He got married on April 4th.
Okay, now we got a tangent on this one. So a decade ago, or about to be a decade ago, my just absolute best friend in the world is getting married, and I got the privilege of giving the best man speech.
Oh, you caught me for a second. I was like, I didn't know we were that close. I got married about 10 years ago. This is so nice. But you did not stand up and give a best man speech at my wedding. So
I did not. And conveniently, they were getting married on April 5th of 2014. And I kept my mouth shut for months about it, and worked it into my speech. And so in front of everybody I asked, so Ryan, like, did you know that this was First Contact Day? Ryan goes, no, I had no idea. And I turn to the audience and say, this is one of the reasons I love you. And everyone goes, aw. And I go, even when you're not even trying, you're still a complete nerd.
That's great. That's great.
And then years later, my sister Elizabeth also got married on First Contact Day. So it's a very big day in my family.
That's awesome.
I love this movie. It is easily, in my mind, one of the best, if not the best Star Trek film. And I think you can only put it up against Wrath of Kahn, in my mind, in terms of who can battle over what is the best Star Trek film.
Really?
I put it above The Whales.
I don't know if I would agree with you. I rewatched it. I'm a different person than I was when I first saw it. It was a good story. I will give it that. I found some of the writing to not be great, and the acting was great. I enjoyed that. So I thought the story was good. Acting was good. I didn't love all of the writing for it. So for me, not better than Voyage Home or Wrath of Kahn. But it was still very entertaining.
I'm going to go a little bit further than that, Barack. I will say flat out, this movie does not hold up.
Oh wow.
Hot take.
Yeah, I will say that I absolutely love Sir Patrick Stewart. He is one of my favorite actors. He was over the top and very Shakespearean on the stage, as opposed to more film acting like he should have been doing. And I could feel it almost in like the direction, because you see him do these like bursts of anger, smashing the glass of his display case and looking like he really feels bad that he made that choice, but just going strong because he's that kind of actor. But man, I do not think it holds up. I will say the cast is insane amazing.
Yeah.
I mean, like in addition to the regular cast of The Next Generation, which was great. I mean, like Alfre Woodard, I did not know her then. I did not know who she was. And James Cromwell was familiar, but kind of that guy. And Neil McDonough, he's a definite that guy, but he played Hawk.
Yeah.
Adam Scott is even in this.
That's my favorite thing upon rewatching it, is realizing that Adam Scott is the
Little
the
snarky-
helm officer on the Defiant.
Wait, what?
Yeah.
I totally missed that.
Yeah.
That's very fun.
Also, for those of us who really like to spread out our cinematic nerddom, Dwight Schultz,
Mhm.
who played Howling Mad Murdoch on the original A-Team series, is the fanboy of Dr. Cochran, who's like, "Nice to meet you, Mr. Dr.
Oh,
Cochran. I'm
that's
so
fun.
excited." So
Yeah,
many
great
up-and-coming.
cast. Really
Yeah.
great cast.
Definitely
Yeah.
not Swedish.
Not Swedish at all. Well, we can definitely debate the merits of this film. As I said, I'll stake my claim to saying it is, to me, in my mind, right up there with The Wrath of Kahn in terms of how good it is. So I'm glad that we've all watched it. So, in terms of today's topic and discussion, I think there's no shortage of nuggets and ideas and themes we can explore from the movie. So, with that, I want to give us like 2 rounds of guesses. The first one is without a hint. Just
Without a lead in?
without a lead in, just like
No
paint
hint.
bucket. I want to hear where your brains are.
Talk about the final frontier. Let's go into Ethan's mind.
Yeah.
That could be an episode.
Try to figure out what he's thinking.
No, that's it. Really?
I'll
Okay,
narrow it.
Here's narrow it. Please narrow it.
Okay. I am focusing on the idea of first contact.
Oh, okay. That wasn't any of my guesses, so I'm glad that we narrowed it.
So the idea of first contact, I hear as 2 different things. And one of my thoughts was the Sinai experience.
Mm-hmm.
But I wonder, is it anything related to the power of touch?
Oh, fascinating. No, but tell me more.
Well, I saw that as a theme throughout the movie, that, the characters are military. They don't touch a lot. But there was a moment at the very first time they land on Earth in 2063 where Picard puts his hand against the warp core and I've seen it in the Smithsonian, but I've never been able to touch it. It was my dream. I've dreamt of this moment all my life.
He went to the Smithsonian hundreds of times as a child. That's what I went to the Smithsonian hundreds of times, and I think the line is touch it.
I think the line might be dozens, but the point stands.
Sure.
That's a lot.
And that the Smithsonian still exists. Okay, so and he has a discussion with Data about the power of touch and how it makes something more real. And touch is contact. And how, like, humans have always wondered if there was intelligent life beyond Earth, which is so egotistical. And then they make contact. They have that first touch, and it's happenstance. And so after they touch the warp core, the next moment of touch, when Jean-Luc Picard gets Lily to trust him, he offers his hand to her, and she holds his hand.
Oh, that's so good.
And then the Borg Queen blows on Data's skin and seduces him.
I was going to say...
Totally unnecessary. Yeah. Ridiculous.
I didn't catch. This is a great pull. I did not catch any of these like actual contact references throughout the movie. I didn't think about this.
And then Worf and Picard shake hands when they reconcile after he has that terrible acting moment. And and then at the end, Cochrane squeezes Lily's hand right before they meet the Vulcans.
And I'll give you one further. He then shakes the Vulcan's hand and teaches him what a handshake is.
Right.
Oh, man.
Because he can't do the live long and prosper sign.
Yeah.
Which means he's not Jewish.
He can't do the priestly benediction. Yeah. Oh, that's so good.
That's great. I can't think of anything related to the first contact. Like, I was trying to, I thought this might have been about Cochrane not wanting to be a leader like Moses, or something with the Borg, since it's so Borg heavy. But in terms of this first contact with another group of people, and it changes that world forever. Americanization of Jewry is what I would think of, but it's
another great idea.
What about like Burning Bush or Ezekiel's vision, or any of the moments where God?
But they don't then live with the bush. Like
y'all are. I'm thinking
they
forwards.
live with God.
I'm thinking forwards. How would Judaism react to the discovery of alien life.
Oh, I should have
There we
realized
go.
that it's a
See,
vague.
to the
It's an
mind
Ethan.
of Ethan Lane Miller, ladies and gentlemen.
I
our
wasn't
host
thinking
of the
an
day.
Ethan topic. Okay, so what is it? It's what if Jews what?
How would Judaism react or respond to the discovery of alien life?
This has
Mm.
already been largely debated in the, among the religious Jewish communities.
All right, well, that'll do it for this episode of Torah Smash.
But, questions like if you find an alien life form and they're eating meat, like how do you know if it's kosher? And well, chambered stomach, blah, blah, blah. But
Don't hit all my questions.
But that also assumes like that's a basis understanding of how Earth creatures are
Yeah.
built. And so we can't assume that they're carbon-based entities on other planets. And so
Right.
does it change the rules of kashrut?
right.
I wasn't even thinking about that, but yeah. Well, that's
Well,
super
let's-
fun.
But there's also
Yeah.
a practical application. There's a current practical application when like Ilan Ramon of blessed memory went up in space
Mhm.
and had to know when it was Shabbat.
Mhm.
So they have to things that they figure out, like when does an astronaut celebrate Shabbat? And the answer that he chose, that Ilan Ramon chose, is at sundown in Israel.
Mm.
But,
that's-
there are practical applications that have already had to be discussed.
Ethan, if you've
Yeah.
got an agenda for us, you better pull us in quick.
I was going to say, this is
Like-
getting away from me. Okay. Would the discovery of alien life change, alter, or otherwise challenge beliefs that are fundamental to Judaism?
I think this is beyond Judaism. I think the religions of the world, right? A lot of religions are based on the understanding that this earth is the planet of creatures. And we discussed in a previous episode about the beginning, the Bereshit and creation. And it says, this one pleases me. Is he talking about our world or is he talking about our galaxy?
Mhm.
Right? Has we
Or-
thought about
or
the expansion?
universe.
Right. And so we have pictures of other planets and stars and galaxies and beyond. We have not obtained photos of life. And I want to assume there's some form of organism out there, intelligent or otherwise, that I don't think this planet would be the only one to survive, period. But I don't know what that means in terms of the whole religious aspect of Jesus was born here for the Christians, or right, our holy land Israel is on earth, and so that's where our religion is based. So why would we move to another planet if this is where our homeland is? Right, land of milk and honey. There's no planet of milk and honey. It was a land of milk and honey.
Yet.
That we know of.
Yet. Oh, how cool would that be?
Let's also make the declaration that there is a difference between the kind of person who can separate our lives as religious people from the book that inspires our practices. I am not a person who believes that the Bible is a history. I think I may have said this once or twice. And, when someone says, describe badly what you do for a living, I say I teach about your imaginary friend from our book of Jewish fairy tales. And at the same time, part of the reason that that's got a little bit of a painful twinge to it when we hear it is because there's truth to it. And I don't think it's a book of Jewish fairy tales. I think it is sacred, but it's sacred not because of the stories it tells, but because of the lessons we learn from the stories that it tells.
Right.
Yeah. So in Star Trek, in First Contact, we get the line that poverty and war are essentially gone within a generation, but they don't talk about religion. And Star Trek, other than I would say Deep Space Nine and the Bajorans and their religion, doesn't really address humanity and religion so very much. And it's kind of implied, and in some areas in episodes maybe made a little more explicit, but humanity in Star Trek is kind of treated being like in a post-religious world where they're like traditions. Like I think Christmas is mentioned as part of like an ancient Earth religion or something, which feels kind of wild to imagine the Christianity just being an ancient religion in a few hundred years. Do we think that this could push people away from Judaism?
Any more than we already are?
Well, that's a fair answer.
I think modernity pushes people away from Judaism and secularism and the lure of secularism. But I think also that altruistic mode of society is a very Jewish way to live. to measure your success by the way you help humanity, to me, is very Jewish. And does that mean that the religion would be unnecessary? I would hope not, because our culture is and our history is rich. But I hope the same thing about Islam and Christianity and all the other religions that are out there.
Yeah.
I feel like there's gotta, right? I agree that Star Trek feels like a world post-religion, but I feel like there's got to be something that helps guide morals, right? In First Contact, they talk about how there's no need for money or power.
Yeah.
It's all about helping your fellow man. That's how did they get there? What happened? Did the Messiah come from one of the religions? And everybody's like, oh, okay, I guess this is what we got to do now.
Were the Vulcans the Messiah in this story? Everything changed after they landed.
Sounds like everything. Well, I guess. I don't know.
Can I also take us to a moment where, so did you notice that Elon Musk must be a fan of the movie because the rocket looked exactly like his SpaceX rocket?
I did not notice. That's pretty interesting. Was he a Trekkie?
He must be.
I think
it fits
Elon
his
Musk
MO.
thinks he's a Trekkie, but I've never seen someone who has so missed the point.
Ooh.
Interesting.
See also fundamentalist religionists.
So what I found interesting, I did some research, and there's a fascinating article on Chabad.org titled "Is There Life on Other Planets" by Tzvi Freeman. And the article ultimately concludes that it is quite possible that life exists on other planets, but that the life would not be intelligent or have a culture in the way that humans do, because the Torah is what gives people free will. And if there's no Torah on another planet, then they can't have free will.
Wait, that seems like backwards logic.
Let me pull the quote for you.
I'm not blaming you. I'm blaming the person you're quoting.
Okay. What was left unsaid by the sages willing to accept the possibility of life on other planets was a further description of what these beings are like, what relationship they have to the Almighty, by which laws, if any, they are governed, in what image they were created, and most fundamental of all, whether they share with us free will, the capacity for independent choice, which we as humans have been granted, and which allows us the descriptive of being created in the image of God.
Okay, so it's not quite they don't have Torah and therefore, because to me, that's like backwards from what I was just saying, is like being able to separate yourself from the story. But at the same time, like the image of God is only what we imagine because our imaginings only go so far as we've experienced. And
we can't imagine what we can't conceive.
Right. And so if we do believe in a God who has, they say, 70 faces, there's also, each face should have 70 faces and so on and so on. And it gives an infinite number of possibilities that God could be. And if there's, like you mentioned in the world of Star Trek, there are species that have religion of some kind. I don't know anything about those religions, but having religion is not fully dependent on what we think that God looks like.
Okay.
Well, plus we discussed with Mira and Mora, they're all Jewish anyway, so.
Yeah, that's true. Okay. Could an alien convert to Judaism and have a B'nai Mitzvah ceremony?
Absolutely. Why not?
Yeah.
I'm asking.
Yeah, it's a yes for me.
Yeah.
I can't think of any reason why not. Well, maybe the alien wouldn't have the, physical body part that would need to be circumcised, but see also women.
Right.
So the rules would apply the same, I would say.
What if they were a crustacean?
Oh, like if they're not kosher?
Yes.
Like
I mean, we're not going to eat them.
Dr.
humans
Zoidberg. Dr.
Humans aren't
Zoidberg's
kosher.
Jewish.
Yeah, we had this discussion with
Yes, we
Zoidberg.
did.
But yeah, I would say one's physical form does not solidly determine on its own whether or not you are qualified to be Jewish.
Oh, that's good. So what about artificial life, like Data or the Borg? Could they be Jewish and have a B'nai Mitzvah?
Well, they can't have a B'nai Mitzvah. They could have a B'nai Mitzvah ceremony.
Well, if the Borg are a collective, would it be B'nai Mitzvah?
It would only, that would be grammatically correct, actually. Yes. It would be a collective noun, B'nai.
Yes.
So
funny.
I mean, I would say, the Borg would have to do some serious change of attitude before they would be accepted by any rabbi worth their salt. But, as far as data, like that's a really good question because according to the movie, he is kind of trying to increase his humanity with that emotion chip.
Yes.
By the way, another stupid move where he just like cocks his head to the side as if to say, I'm turning off my chip. Like, come on, you don't need to cock your head to the side to turn off a chip. You could just say, okay, it's off.
What you see in movies, they often use a visual way to help tell the story.
I'm imagining
let
this.
his eyes flicker in color. Like, come on.
It was the 90s. It was a different time.
I'm imagining this Borg Mitzvah, and I just picture like a few rows of Borg, and the service starts and the service ends, and you look up and the entire audience is Borg now. Like throughout the service, they've just assimilated the rest of the community. Yeah.
Now we are one community. Yeah.
Yeah. Welcome to our Borg Mitzvah.
Yeah.
Oh, that's a episode title.
Maybe. You're so not invited to my Borg Mitzvah.
Yeah. I really love yeah. I really love the comment earlier about how this has been debated because there's real life applications. I think Elon Ramon is a perfect example. We're going to be sending astronauts back to the moon, hopefully in this decade, with a goal of perhaps establishing a semi-permanent presence on the moon and perhaps even elsewhere. How does one observe Shabbat when you're not on Earth is relevant. And in this moment of growing artificial intelligence, I don't think it's far-fetched to ask questions about artificial life and religion and what constitutes personhood, which I suppose is a whole nother topic together.
How would you during prayers, you're supposed to face Jerusalem. So when you're on another planet, you've got to constantly be aware of where planets are arranged astronomically in order to know where to face if Jerusalem remains the place to bow to. If you're on the moon or Mars or a further planet, the planets don't rotate together. And so that's got to be so complicated.
And the whole concept of like north, east, west, and south is
yeah. Would you just look up?
Useless.
Bet you'd bow upwards at that point and hope that the planet is facing
up.
I don't know how to do that.
There is actually a mini fix for this, and that is that when you are either unaware of where Jerusalem is or are unable to face that way for whatever reason, you can face the ark.
As long as there's an ark.
As long as there's, so I mean, the Hebrew word for ark is Aron Kodesh, which really just means holy cabinet.
It's also possible for a planet to have more than two magnetic poles, so that could even further complicate things.
Oh, this is so fun.
Yeah. I'm excited to hear RDY on this. Would kashrut allow me to eat a fruit or vegetable from another planet?
Fruit or vegetable, yeah.
No questions about it?
No, fruits and vegetables are easy as long as they're not, the Torah gives rules for animals as we define them. And it says, all the seed-bearing fruit and plants and grasses are yours to consume. It doesn't say be careful, leaves of three, let it be, but it allows us to understand that fruits and veggies are always good for everyone.
What about fruits and vegetables that are sentient and have hooved feet?
Well, then they're not a fruit or vegetable.
Wow, we see you got to expand your mind, man. We're talking about existence on other planets. Who knows what they look like?
Or how they define them. So I would say it would depend on the classification on that planet, perhaps. And perhaps we would realize that what's really important about our dietary practices is that we pay attention to what goes into our body, not following the rules, so to speak.
So could I eat a space lobster from another planet?
Space lobster.
I mean, not Zoidberg, but
I would never eat Zoidberg.
You're imagining that there are these things. So I would say,
RDY, there might be these things in our own solar system. Like there are moons of other planets that we're now pretty sure has water on them.
Right, but lobster correct me if I'm wrong, but lobster are still carbon-based life forms. So
correct. I suppose I just say lobster analog. Something that we would look at and we'd be like, oh yeah, that looks like an earth lobster. A crustacean.
I would say that if it is a water-based creature, that has both fins and scales, it's kosher according to the rules. And if it's a water-based creature that has neither or only one of those things, it is not considered kosher. So crustaceans, whether they are earthbound or spacebound, are out if you follow those rules.
Mm-hmm.
The movie First Contact would say that these space lobsters have already mastered space travel. And so they've been watching us and just ignoring us. And yet here we are having a conversation about them. And they're like, these people haven't even discovered how to travel outside their own atmosphere yet. I don't need to bother with them. And we are trying to figure out how we fit in with their community. Did that make sense? I'm really tired.
It makes it's a fascinating point. That's why I was quiet.
Yeah.
I was absorbing.
So we've talked about eating alien life. I don't know if you've been around the internet, but there's another topic about alien life that we haven't touched on yet.
You talk about First Contact of the Naughty Bits?
Oh, yes, I am. Would Judaism allow
Rock
me?
looks so frustrated.
Please let us get through this segment without a ton of editing. I implore both of you.
Are you talking about first romantic contact?
Oh, that's
Yes,
so
I
sweet.
am.
Oh, that's so nice.
And definitely said it that way on the first take. Well, I'm so excited to have you in Austin. Would Judaism allow me to marry an alien?
You're getting into weird. Here's the thing. We are Reformed Jews. Reformed Jews would allow you to marry a Christian person if you wanted, depending on the clergy and depending on how you determined to raise your household. The wedding is not the important part of this conversation. It's if you, as a Jewish person who wants to live a Jewish life, raise Jewish children, have a Jewish family, have a Jewish household, would that alien be accepting of your lifestyle and want to join your lifestyle? That's the question that I would have. Whatever you want to do with your life and who you want to marry, fine. But if you are looking to have a Jewish household, Jewish family, I hope your spouse, whoever that creature turns out to be, I'm not calling your spouses creatures. I apologize. But as long as they get along with you and they support that decision, then it's great.
I would say also to remind us and our listeners that to make a slight reference to another science fiction series, Judaism is not a monolith. And Judaism does not speak in one voice. And so does Judaism accept X? You'll always find yes and you'll always find no for most of these questions. But I would say that if you were to simplify the question of our understanding of the word alien and say, does it just mean stranger, someone who's not a part of our culture, not a part of our ways? And like Barak said, you can find a rabbi who will marry you if you are marrying someone who you're in love with, who has a different culture, who is joining our culture, which some rabbis require that they first convert, or some rabbis require that they have some sort of like acknowledgement that they're going to raise Jewish children. And some rabbis just say, okay. And I would say if that's the micro in our world for intermarriage, then I would assume the macro would follow those same standards.
I think that's the ultimate answer. And you're right that we're approaching it from the perspective of Reform Judaism. And I think that's one of the beauties and joys of Judaism. Not that the three of us on this podcast are biased or anything, but that we have literal thousands of years of rabbis and scholars arguing with each other about topics and knowing that these discussions will continue on into the future as well. I mean, it's so interesting that we're not the first people to have this sort of conversation. I mean, you said it, RDY. And also in my research, I found a scholarly article about Judaism and alien life that I need a JSTOR subscription to be able to read. I want to read that. Like, these are fun theoretical conversations. And I think as we've been having them, though, we've touched on the ways in which, well, it's all theoretical till it's real.
Which was science fiction since the beginning of science fiction.
That's why I love science fiction. Like, I'm holding up my smartphone. 20 years ago, like, I have a little touch screen in my pocket. I'd be like, what?
Right?
Like one of those things they have on Star Trek, and be like, actually better than that.
How close
40
were we
years
to...
ago, when I was in math class, my teacher, Mr. Alexander, he was my teacher in 7th and 8th grade for math. And he used to say, you have to learn how to do it in your head because you're not going to carry a calculator around in your pocket. Well, guess what?
Oops.
How far away are we from revisiting the moon again?
So in
1,000
theory,
miles.
Oh.
in theory, within the next couple of years, we're going to get Artemis 2, which will put humans in orbit of the moon. And I believe Artemis 3 will be an actual landing on the moon.
I'm curious. I'm in my next Spurtus class, and I'm thinking ahead to my final paper, which is, in 10 years, what does Judaism look like?
Shout out to Hal.
Yeah, shout out to Hal Lewis. And now this is making me think, I wonder if I have to think bigger. And what if our spaceship has landed on the moon and got attention of the passing Vulcan ship, who then says, hey guys, you've made it. Welcome to the Federated Alliance. Yeah. And what does Judaism look like when that happens? That's this whole conversation, but now I want to figure out how to bring it into my paper.
I sincerely hope you do, because I want to see Hal grade that. And I say that with the utmost love and respect to both of you. I'd love to get his opinion on that. Yeah, I mean, I think as we start to kind of wrap this up, I'm aware that these questions, one, don't have answers to them, and two, the answer from basically all of them is like, well, it depends. What's your perspective?
And I mean, it's interesting that you say perspective because all of our religion is built around humanity's perspective. I mean, the idea that the sun goes up and down from our perspective. We call it sunrise and sunset instead of earth turn, because that would be silly. But, we talk about time moving according to our perspective of planetary movement. And we use all of this in our religion, multiplied sometimes by numbers. But in general, we follow this world from our point of view. Even just the anthropomorphization of God, giving God human features like a hand, a back, a mind, or even emotions. That is because that's the world we know. My professor at Hebrew Union College, Dr. Leonard Kravitz, would say, if everyone in the world was a plumber, God would be a faucet. But the one thing we have in common is we're all people, so we make God human in form, or maybe more to the point, we make us in God's image. Therefore, God must look something like a humanoid.
Yeah.
Was there religion in this movie prior to First Contact? Like, none of the characters on Earth, which is surprising, made any sort of religious references that I can recall.
Their
They
religion
do.
is rock and roll.
But they do. When they're in the Phoenix,
Mhm.
Zephram Cochrane sees the Enterprise and he says, "Sweet Jesus."
Okay.
Which also could be just bad writing.
Right.
From what I know from the rest of the movie.
Or I will say it could also just be still a commonly used idiom on Earth at that time period. It's not that far in the future from present day.
I mean, people don't really say it today.
Fair.
I'm sorry. Can we go back to the poor writing of this movie? Can we talk about this for a second, Ethan?
I mean, you're welcome to.
So
Here's a problem that I have, which they don't need to focus on. It's not the point of the story, but the time travel nerd in me is frustrated at the start of the movie.
I think I know where this is going, and I have an answer prepared.
Oh, good. So the Borg travel through their portal, and the Earth is now populated with Borg, which means they've succeeded.
Yep.
Which would mean that even if they've traveled through the portal behind them, they should know they've failed because Earth is covered with Borg. But they go in and succeed, in which case they shouldn't have seen that warning ahead of time, where they would never go in, which would mean it's travel. So there's this paradox happening.
Actually, there's actually not. They just hadn't done it yet.
But
and yet they had.
But time travel.
But they hadn't. They hadn't done it yet.
Ethan is following the Marvel explanation of time travel, whereas Barack is following the logical.
Well,
I'm following the Back to the Future rules.
So actually, there's a line where Dr. Crusher asks, well, if they change history, how are we still here? And the answer is they were
stuck
caught. So the flow of time was
the temporal flow protected them from the
Do you think, if we're talking Back to the Future rules, so they were stuck in the alternate timeline, they were able to visualize that because they were inside that temporal flux, as opposed to the people outside.
Maybe they were in a bubble of unchanged time is maybe the right way to describe it.
It just bugged me.
Well, the other side of your question, without that temporal protection nonsense, excuse me, was, would it be the same portal?
I mean, that's also another question.
Yeah.
Oh, that's good.
I will say there is a comic book that explores the story where the Enterprise doesn't immediately return at the end of the movie. They get pulled to a parallel universe and they team up with the X-Men.
That's
Wait a
awesome.
minute. Is that the book? Hold on. I mentioned a book previously on the podcast where Star Trek and X-Men, it's a novel, and I had it. I don't think I still have it, but I never fully read it. Is that where this story comes from? I'll have to go find this book.
I'm checking.
Yeah, do you know the name of the book, Ethan?
There's Planet X.
That's the one. That's the one I'm thinking of.
Yeah, that might be it.
I might have to put that on my Marvel Universe bookshelf.
Yeah, that's what I'm thinking of. I'm looking at the cover that I used to have as a child, but I never read it because I hated reading as a child. But that cover is extremely familiar.
Oh, maybe I'm thinking of something. There's definitely a cross. Oh, is it Second Contact? There might be a few crossovers. Oh, this is great. A mutual resemblance between Professor Xavier and Jean-Luc Picard is mentioned when Crusher creates a holographic duplicate of Xavier to help investigate the problem on the planet.
That's funny.
Although this book was written and published long before the first X-Men movie was cast, this proved to be canny foreshadowing.
That's super fun.
As long as we can agree that the movie was well directed, I will accept criticism on the writing.
By Jonathan Frakes.
Yes.
Riker directed this movie. I had no
Yes, he
idea.
did.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah, is that why Worf didn't punch him when he asked him if he still knew how to use his...
How to fire the phasers, yes.
Yeah. How did Worf not react to that at all? Because
Well,
he was saying it to the director.
Well, no, also that's always been Worf's MO. Apparently, like, Michael Dorn is very much like that, where like he'll be very funny unintentionally and not react to things, and people laughing. He's like, why are you laughing?
Can I ask if anybody have any like other favorite or worst parts of this movie?
Yes. The weapons. When they are getting their weapons out and like throwing them down to each other on the chute, it sounds plastic.
Space plastic.
Like, come on, get a Foley. Like, let's have someone like clicking metal together. It wouldn't be plastic. It would melt.
Well, it's not. It's space plastic.
I did enjoy the cameo by the holographic doctor.
Mm-hmm.
I remember that being super fun. And when it happened again, I was like, oh, yeah, that's fun. And I'm not a doorstop. I'm a doctor.
Yeah. They did a special showing in theaters about 2 years back. And it was the first time I'd seen it in a theater since it came out in like 96. And while I've seen this movie so many times, in some ways it was like seeing it for the first time in ages. And I never saw it was on the screen, but they embedded LED lights in the Borg Queen's skull underneath some of her makeup. And on watching it on like a TV screen, I never noticed it. But seeing it on the movie screen, I was like, oh my God, that's amazing. So it was just a theater full of nerds. Conveniently, Ryan was in that same theater. We did not coordinate it. We were still there. Ryan and their partner were there. It was just great. There was nothing like a bunch of Trekkies watching I don't even know how old that movie was, but I was in elementary school when it came out. So you do the math.
That's fun.
Any final words?
The Data Ex Machina was bothersome for me at the end.
Well phrased.
What the Data was playing the Borg Queen?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Like
I don't understand
0.68 seconds or
why.
whatever.
Like he believed her for 0.68 seconds, which would have been much earlier in this whole process. You know, part of me is like, okay, he would disable the auto destruct so the ship isn't destroyed. But then why wait to reveal yourself after shooting the phasers just for that moment? When for him, I didn't feel it played a purpose except for us as the viewer. And so that felt off.
Is it possible?
Yeah, give me a reason.
Data was acting human?
No.
Okay.
Because he said that she made him closer to a human than he's ever been before.
But he's wrong.
In her
physically,
in her definition of being human, not his.
Fair. I like that answer.
But I will say that in that scene where Picard is hanging from the hoses and swinging across the field of acid gas, wouldn't it have been better to do that before Picard got there?
I mean, yeah.
If he could do it at any time, why not just do it?
I think this is an area in which the movie doesn't do a great job explaining it, but if you watch, the Borg Queen is so transfixed watching the torpedoes fly towards the Phoenix, like forcing Picard to watch the end of the future. I think it's implied that she's distracted. And in the background is when we see Data creeping towards the coolant tank to bash it open. So again, I've seen this movie so many times that like,
Yeah, apologies for the people who haven't seen this in years or ever that we're diving into these details. Like when the Borg Queen is hanging on Picard's legs, does she not still have those wire cables that she could use to grab? Is her
well, they
arm
come down and Picard grabs them.
He grabs one of them.
Yeah, everybody knows you need all of them to work. Oh boy, this was great. Thanks, y'all.
Yeah,
Thanks for the rewatch. That was good.
I will say that in 1996, I did enjoy the movie.
Agreed.
I saw it in the theaters when it came out. It was my senior year of college, and I thought it was great.
Well, that'll do it. What?
I was wrong, but
you're allowed to change your opinion and be incorrect as you age. It's fine. That'll do it for this episode of Torah Smash. Our fiscal sponsor is Jewish Creativity International. Our theme music was created by Sean Fogel. You can check out Sean's bands and studio work at www.thesleepywest.com. This episode was supported in part by the novel Vashti's Daughter by Raven West. A modern Purim story, Vashti's Daughter centers around book publisher Anna Stein, who discovers a mysterious manuscript that transports her back in time where she learns she is the reincarnated daughter of Queen Vashti. Anna must break an ancient curse put on her to fulfill a vow she made centuries ago that will reveal the world the actual heroine of the whole Megillah and bring Anna true love and happiness in the present. Vashti's Daughter is available in paperback and Kindle ebook on Amazon.com. If you enjoyed today's episode, be sure to rate and review us wherever you listen. It helps others find us and is an excellent way to support the podcast. We want to hear from you and continue today's nerdy discussion. Go to torahsmash.com to find where to connect with us online, purchase swag from our store, support us with a donation, find previous episodes, and more. And what do you call all the food at the Oneg that you can't resist eating even though it's all pretty much the same? A smorgasbord.
Oh, I wish we could keep all of this in.
This is like Brock's
I was like,
nightmare.